Hi there, and welcome to YindyPlayZ. I'm Yindy, and at the time of recording, a 36-year-old aging millennial with a lifelong passion for games. I grew up mainly in the PC gaming space in the early 90s, before moving on to more familiar consoles like the PS2 or original Xbox at the turn of the millennium. However, my love of gaming and other crippling addiction, Warhammer, can both be traced back to the same origin point. When I was but a wee lad, my dad owned an Amiga 500, one of the first home computers made by Commodore in the late 80s. This was an era of basement coders and chunky cereal box games. A very different time. Recognising that home computers were the future, my dad wanted to make sure that I grew up alongside and was fully comfortable with this new emerging technology. Though, it would be a few decades before that true vision came to pass. I remember seeing one of those bad faith, back in my day memes, that read, "Because no boy remembers when their dad played video games." And I just want to take a moment to say bullshit to that. Watching my dad play the early Amiga, whether I was invited or I slipped out of bed at 2 AM in the morning, and then watched him play the original Space Hulk through a crack in the living room door, and then wondered why I had nightmares for 2 months after, formed some of my earliest and fondest childhood memories. So what better way to kick off my gaming channel than a rundown of classic Amiga games, in no particular order, that I used to share with Dad, and solidified my love of gaming and have lived rent-free in my head for the past 30 years. Alien Breed. Published by Team 17. Yes, that Team 17. Who are not only still going strong today, but have also published some of my favourite recent indie titles, like Blasphemous, Dredge, and the newly released Date Everything. Saying that they have a long pedigree is honestly an understatement, but everyone has to start somewhere. Alien Breed was released in 1990, a shameless rip-off of the Alien franchise. This top-down shooter was one of the first two-player games I experienced with Dad. While the series would go on to include some Doom clones, and even see a reboot in 2009, there's just something haunting and timeless about the original's atmosphere. I also just want to highlight the difference in mindset between today's overdeveloped AAA mass market slop and the more anarchic punk energy of the Amiga era. It was a time when the rules hadn't been fully established yet, and small teams or even solo developers could get away with making wild creative swings that you'd never get away with today. Nothing typifies this more than the original Alien Breed cheat codes, some of which I will attempt to read for you now. Skip to level 3. I can't be arsed playing the first levels. I mean, fair, that would just be a DLC these days. Reverse joystick controls. Pissed as a fart. Weaker weapons. The Iraqis made these weapons. Make player invisible. Salman Rushdie plays Alien Breed. And my personal favourite. I wonder if Dolly Parton's is as big as her. It was a very different time. We also played a lot of Alien Breed 2. The horror continues. Though, when I tried to play it again recently, I kept getting ran over by those bloody helicopters, which didn't make much sense. Also, the aliens spit acid now? That seems hardly fair. Let's check out some of the Alien Breed 2 cheat codes. Level 2. 353828. Level 3. 108383. Level 4. 370101. Aww. They're not nearly as fun. Still. 69 out of 10. Harlequin. Probably one of the strangest and lesser known titles on this list. Harlequin was published by Gremlin Graphics in 1992, another name that you'll hear again. While it may look like a bog standard level based platformer at first glance, Harlequin actually tried to do some pretty interesting things. It wasn't quite a Metroidvania, but it did feature a lot of backtracking and revisiting levels multiple times to flip switches and unlock pathways elsewhere. It also had some of the most whimsical and haunting enemy and level designs, plus a soundtrack that's lived rent-free in my head for the past 30 years. It was also hard as nails. I mean, just look at some of those jumps. And while in a windstorm? I don't think Dad ever beat this one, but he did somehow manage to glitch the game into playing the ending cinematic, blasting off into the sky in a penis-shaped clock tower. Take that, Jeff Bezos. Dad beat you to it. Also, any game that includes a thank you to Mum and Dad in the credits is just inherently sweet. 69 out of 10. Turrican II, The Final Fight. Now, during the pandemic, Dad and I played a lot of Halo and Destiny, and I'd often tease him for struggling with jumping puzzles or accidentally walking off cliffs. But somehow, this man managed to beat the Turrican games. You can keep your Samus Aran. There's only one sci-fi roly-poly boy for me. While it may superficially resemble Metroid, Turrican was a fast-paced run-and-gun shooter packed with big guns and massive screen-clearing energy. Like many games on this list, it had a stellar soundtrack, although I'm not sure I can play it here for fear of being copyright claimed. The footage you're seeing now is from the Switch port, which includes quality of life improvements like a rewind feature and save states, all of which I needed to get through the first few levels. So, major kudos to Dad for beating this monster back in the day. I take back every time I mocked you for missing a ledge in Destiny. 69 out of 10. Of course, no Amiga game list would be complete without this classic puzzler of adorable, cute genocide. Lemmings was developed in my hometown of Dundee. We even have little statues of Lemmings hidden around the city. I loved Lemmings as a kid, and it was one of the few games that my 4-year-old self could actually play. Even if that meant turning half of them into suicide bombers, marching them off cliffs and into fiery pits of death. Whoops. There was also literally a level that looked like it had been ripped straight out of Bowser's castle. Like most games on this list, the music was unforgettable, and it's impossible not to smile every time I hear it. Valhalla and the Lord of Infinity / Before the War. Developed by Vulcan Software, few games sum up the mood, atmosphere and artistry of the Amiga era better than the work from the team at Vulcan Software. While the Amiga was home to many classic adventure games like Simon the Sorcerer or Monkey Island, I tend to associate them more with PC gaming. The PC Simon the Sorcerer port even featured full voice acting by none other than Chris Barry, aka Rimmer from Red Dwarf.
Mr. Flibble's very cross.
Valhalla and the Lord of Infinity, however, was the first top-down, fully voice-acted adventure puzzle game on the Amiga. You played as the titular Prince of Valhalla, returning after many years of exile to reclaim your rightful throne from your treacherous uncle Lord Infinity, who killed your father and stole the throne for himself. Although, I never really liked the prince. He could fall down a pit for all I cared. But it was the second game in the series that I remember playing through with Dad. A prequel to the original, Valhalla Before the War had you play as Lord Infinity himself.
I am the Lord of Infinity. I have a sad story to tell.
As he plotted and schemed to take over the kingdom. And honestly, with a name like Lord Infinity, can you really blame him? The atmosphere and art direction of the Valhalla games is what made them so memorable, even if the puzzles were often quite obtuse. I mean, how the hell was I supposed to find that potion of faith in the first 2 minutes without a guide? 69 out of 10. Timekeepers. Vulcan Software also made their own Lemmings clone, which, for the longest time, I actually thought was an official Lemmings game, mainly because the characters didn't have noses. Timekeepers was a puzzle game where, like in Lemmings, you had to lay out a path and guide a platoon of elite timekeepers, all of whom had the self-preservation instincts of a used teabag, through 60 levels across 4 distinct time zones. All the while trying to defuse 4 nuclear bombs stolen by the psychotic warlord named Wilhelm. It was exactly as bonkers as it sounded. But it still had the same stellar art direction and moody atmosphere that made the Valhalla games so memorable. Honourable mentions. Chaos Engine. One my dad owned, and I think I played a couple of times. Another hard-as-nails top-down shooter. I could barely get past the first level. Still, it's one of the few games that's still fully playable on Steam and the Steam Deck these days. Apidya. An utterly bizarre game that stuck with me thanks to its intro cinematic. A stock standard anime protagonist has his lady love struck down by a swarm of killer wasps, sent by an evil wizard. How does he avenge her? By turning into a killer wasp himself and flying through a hard-as-nails horizontal shooter. Also, surprise, the game's not Japanese, it's German. And it was republished by Team 17, possibly as a prank. Super Frog. I never owned this one, but I did play the hell out of the demo. It's our friends over at Team 17 again, this time trying to rip off Sonic the Hedgehog, with a cute woodland animal going really fast. Great music, colourful design, but rushing to the end of the level wasn't enough. You also needed to find that bloody golden key. Zool. Ah yes, Chubba Chub, the game. With none of Mario's charm or Sonic's effortless cool, you played a small green ninja alien traversing every dentist's worst nightmare with some truly god-awful jumping mechanics. It somehow also got a sequel, with Lady Zool, no less, that absolutely no one remembers. Probably for the best. 1987 Star Wars. Now this one I did play the crap out of back in the day. It consists of a single scenario you play repeatedly with increasing difficulty. The run-up and destruction of the Death Star. This was the OG Star Wars fighter game, predating titles like X-Wing and TIE Fighter, and still lives on in spirit in games like Star Wars Squadrons, which I'm surprisingly good at in VR. Must have been all the childhood practice.
Yeah, that was 1 in a million.
Space Hulk. This game traumatized me as a kid. Intended as a faithful adaptation of the claustrophobic intensity of the Warhammer 40k board game, the 1993 Amiga game is pure nightmare fuel. It was also my first introduction to the grim darkness of the Warhammer universe. I still clearly picture the iconic box art of the Deathwing Terminator, the haunting intro cinematic, which sadly I can't play the audio from, and that legendary ending cutscene. The game was also unfair as hell. You played from a first-person perspective, controlling a squad of 5 to 10 Terminators, all of whom had weapons that jammed if they so much as sneezed too hard. And despite their super advanced tactical dreadnought armour, they died instantly if they even so much as brushed up against a Gene Stealer. Seriously, I'm playing that game, I can't last more than 30 seconds.
That's what she said.
Oh, shut up, you know what I meant. So how Dad managed to complete this back in the day, I'll never know. Space Crusade. Thankfully, there was a much more kid-friendly introduction to the 40k universe. One I could actually play as a 4-year-old without wetting the bed. It even had its own TV commercial.
Warp space to fight the force of chaos. Deep in a parallel universe where nightmares are real.
I'm talking, of course, about 1992's Space Crusade, published by our other friends over at Gremlin Graphics. Now, I can easily make a full video on Space Crusade alone, and I probably still will, but for now, I'll say this. It was a faithful turn-based adaptation of the board game of the same name. Remember that photo I showed earlier of me and Dad? Yep, we were playing Space Crusade. In this game, you play as one of the original Space Marine chapters. Labour, Conservative and Lib Dem. Sorry, I mean Blood Angel, Ultramarine and Imperial Fist. Still set aboard a Space Hulk, but this time you were fighting Orcs, Chaos Marines, Chaos Androids, before they were Necrons, and Gene Stealers. Although, in this version, they were renamed to Soul Suckers and had their rending claws replaced by butter knives. All in all, it was a surreal glimpse into 40k's early days. One of my fondest memories playing with Dad was when a Dreadnought had his entire squad pinned down. I had also just been given the Master Controller perk, letting me open and close the airlock doors. So, there he was, begging me to crush this Dreadnought and save his team. I almost wish I did now. What? I was 4. Also, side note, if anyone knows why the Blood Angel Sergeant, and only the Blood Angel Sergeant, has white power armour, and looks like Rod Stewart in half the cutscenes, please let me know. Also, Dad, I blame you for my crippling addiction to plastic crack. And I wouldn't have it any other way. The end of the Amiga era. By the time my sister was born in 1996, we had fully moved on to early PC gaming. And when she was old enough, we embraced the mainstream consoles like PlayStation, N64 and Xbox. And while we would go on to make new memories with those, the Amiga 500 had already become a relic of the distant past. But for me, it still holds the foundation of my gaming identity. Memories I share with Dad, and Dad alone. We still have the original Amiga, and I'm sure it still works, but these days, its real value is more as a museum piece. Anyone who's ever tried to set up vintage tech knows how much of a ball ache it is to get working on modern hardware, unless you build a dedicated gaming setup with period accurate CRT. Thankfully, a few years ago, in part due to the boom of the mini retro console craze, the Amiga A500 Mini was released to the world. If you're just looking to play the games, and you aren't interested in the hardware side, then there's plenty of great emulators out there, like Amiga Game Selector, that would probably give you a smoother experience. But if you want to own a tiny piece of gaming history, then the A500 Mini will definitely bring back those childhood memories. Was it worth the 125 quid that I paid for it on Amazon? Well, with the 25 games that came pre-bundled into it, probably not. But the fact that you can preload your own games, and even pick up a USB stick that has the entire Amiga back catalogue preloaded on it, means that the Amiga 500 remains playable even to this day. It's also a fascinating case study on just how far games have come over the past 30 years. Even if my Gen Z students, upon encountering a floppy disk for the first time, asked me, why did I 3D print the save icon? I'm old. But to all the memories that I formed with Dad, memories that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life, and I look forward to passing on and creating new ones with my own kids someday. I just want to say, thank you, Dad. This one's for you. The Amiga A500. Final review. 69 out of 10.